Hi, this is Dana Arcuri. Welcome back to my channel. I am an author, speaker, survivor, and advocate from danaarcuri.com. And today's topic is 10 signs of an emotionally immature parent. And so if we want to first look at the definition of immaturity, it is the lack of personal and emotional development. So it's basically stunted growth. Despite someone's age, and they may be an adult, they may actually still be behaving, thinking, and having very many characteristics that are either childlike or juvenile. We must also know that emotional immaturity is a condition where a parent thinks that they are the center of attention. They believe in their own eyes that the world revolves around them. They may have some egotistical mannerisms and traits. They may be on a power trip. They basically do believe that everybody needs to bow down to their wishes or else all hell breaks loose. I love this quote by Albert Einstein, and he says, "Maturity appears when we start to worry more about others than about ourselves." So basically he's saying, maturity is when we start changing, transforming, we grow up, we develop, and we become more concerned about other people, about humanity. We start really caring and having empathy and compassion for other people. And we know that we are not the center of the universe. So I think that is very, very true. Here is some more insight on the emotionally immature parent. So in some cases, this parent, whether it is your mother or your father, or it can be in some cases both parents, that they could also be a narcissist. They may exhibit selfish, childish behaviors. They could be very demanding, high maintenance. They expect others to pamper them and to meet all of their needs, no matter how unrealistic they may be. And so let's move on to the 10 signs of an emotionally immature parent. And keep in mind that this is only some of the signs and the red flags for it, and there's so many more. So let's get started. Number 1, the emotionally immature parent loves to play the blame game. They love everything to do with like mind games, getting you all kind of confused, making you feel guilty and bad. These people who are emotionally immature parents blame others for whatever goes wrong. It doesn't matter how minor or major the circumstance may be. In their eyes, it's always your fault. So they never take responsibility for their own words, their actions, their false or limited beliefs, and on it goes. So regardless of what their behavior is and how absolutely immature, childish, and ridiculous it can become, they blame everyone else. It's your fault. It's all you. You're the problem. Next. Oh, they love to play the victim card. Oh, woe is me. Woe is me. So they play the victim card, and they'll use everything under the sun to play out the victim. So it's never you. It's never you. You're not the victim. Even if something goes wrong in your life or you go through some serious obstacles or hardships or what have you, they don't care. They don't care. They may hear you. You might be saying, oh my goodness, I was just in a really bad car accident. My car is totaled. I landed in the hospital with broken ribs. You might have this extremely serious injury, and you're not going to get, I'm sorry. You're not going to get, wow, I feel so bad for you, or how can I help you? The one thing is they're not givers. They're not caring. They're not, compassionate people or sensitive. And so they'll turn the conversation back to them. They'll try to outbeat you on how bad it really is. No, I'm the victim. No, this happened to me. No, that happened to me. Oh, well, what about me? So they want the conversation to always be about them because remember, they like playing the victim card. Next is number 3, self-parenting. And so anyone who is the child, and mind you, you might be a grown adult at this point, but you grew up with either one or more immature, emotionally, very immature and very unavailable parents. And so you may relate to what I'm about to share now. So the parent may have been there physically. Okay, so they were physically present in your home. And now in some cases, there could be one parent missing in action due to death or divorce or parent alienation. But in many cases, the grown children will say, yes, I had to self-parent myself because my mother or my father were not emotionally mature. They were not emotionally available. They were very detached. They were not able to be there for me as a child or even as a teenager growing up. And so what happens is this child, it may have been you. I know it was me. We had to learn to parent the parent. Think about this. We were the children of an immature parent. And because of this very toxic situation, very dysfunctional family unit, we were forced to grow up fast. We were forced to take care of our parent. We were forced to try to take care of our home. We may have had to do the cooking, the cleaning. We may have had to watch out for our own selves. We may have had to take on a lot of roles that we were not even in the emotional maturity to do so. Because think about it, a 9-year-old child should not be taking care of other children. They should not be at 9 years old having to take on the role of someone who is an adult. And yet many of us, when we were children, we had to parent the parent. We had to do a lot of hard work and a lot of things that weren't appropriate for our age. And we lost our childhood. We lost our innocence. We had to grow up so very, very fast. If you relate, feel free to comment on that one. Next would be number 4, self-absorbed. Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. The emotionally immature parent is extremely self-absorbed. So they are hyper-focused on themselves. Everything is about them. It's me, me, and only me. And that's what it's all about. You know, you're the child, you need your basic needs taken care of. You know, you need a roof over your head, you need clothes, you need care, you need love, you need shelter, you need your health taken care of. You know, you need your education to be another big focus of your life, and you might need academic help, and yet your parent could be missing in action. They may not be there for you. I could say when I look back on my childhood, my mom did not go to PTA meetings. My mom did not attend most parent-teacher conferences. My mother was never around. She was not present. So it wasn't just that she was a single parent who was a very emotionally immature parent, but she was, a lot of times she was even physically absent. So it wasn't even just like emotionally detached, emotionally unavailable. She wasn't even present most of the time. I had way too much time on my own as a very young child where I had no supervision whatsoever other than my older siblings. And of course that gets into another story because they themselves, even though they may have been 5 or 6 years older than me, it was very inappropriate for my mother to expect them and force them to take care of their younger siblings, including me, when they themselves were extremely young children. So that is quite neglectful. That is quite abusive. It's just mind-blowing how, when you think about it, like if what my mother did back then, if we would just take it and place it into the year of 2020 and have that entire scenario unfold, someone would probably turn my mother in to child welfare. We would probably be taken off of our mother and sent into foster care because our mother was an unfit person, an unfit parent, and emotionally detached, immature, and very unavailable parent. And yes, there was neglect and abuse. Next is that, so the emotional parent who is self-absorbed, regardless of the child's need, regardless of the child's age. So the child, at first is a baby, then you start growing up, then you're school age, and then you become a teenager. Regardless of what season in life you are in, the parent's always absorbed on themselves, not on the child, not on helping the child, not on advocating for the child, especially in school and health and like any other things to do with, say, a parent instilling purpose and meaning and inspiration and helping this child tap into their strengths, to tap into their life purpose. My mother never, ever talked to me about my future, about possibly going into secondary education, about going to college or pursuing my dreams or anything in regards to bettering myself and professionally expanding my horizons. She never, ever spoke any words of encouragement like that to me. Anything that I have ever done, such as going to college more than one time and going to like beauty school and going into the medical industry way back when, it was because I chose to do so. It was because I pursued it, because I had self-motivation. My mother deserves zero credit on who I am today, because everything I am today, I worked my ass off for it, and I became who I am today because I empowered myself and I believed in myself, and I looked into multiple ways to expand myself and become who I am at this very moment. And I think that has been the biggest endeavor of my life, and one that I feel is an accomplishment. It's a very big accomplishment, especially when you were neglected and abused as a child. Next is that the emotionally immature parent has temper tantrums. Again, you're parenting the parent. And unfortunately, this parent has juvenile behaviors due to how self-absorbed the parent is, and how emotionally immature and emotionally unavailable they are. They expect to be the center of attention, and what they will do is act out in hostility if they don't get their own way. So if they are angry at something and things aren't working out as the parent may had wanted, they'll behave in very inappropriate ways. They'll have 2-year-old temper tantrums. They'll have emotional meltdowns. They may actually become violent and then take it out on you. Now, you as the child, or even if you were a teenager or even a grown adult, it's not about you. So again, like, this emotionally immature parent will somehow target you for their anger and hostility and abuse, but you had nothing to do with whatever was going on in this person's life. So for an example, maybe their car broke down, or maybe someone who they were dating, trust me, my mom had plenty of guys lined up, a lot of dating, a lot of bar hopping. But say, for an example, someone just kind of broke off the relationship with her because they realized how emotionally immature she is and that she has some very narcissistic characteristics, and the relationship ended. Then my mother would become hostile towards me. She would blame me. She would take it out on me. Now that's extremely inappropriate, and it's not taking responsibility for their own self and their own relationships. It's really pathetic when the emotionally immature parent is freaking out, flipping out, cussing, swearing, possibly breaking things, throwing things, and carrying on with a very violent, malicious nature. It just goes to show how low they go and how quickly they just crumble to pieces because they can't keep it together, because they have the lack of maturity as an adult. They don't know how to stay stable and keep sane and to somehow manage their emotions. So they're on this emotional roller coaster in which their emotions are all over the place. And a lot of times you will be the brunt of their emotions. And we're talking extremely volatile emotions. Next is that they have unhealthy relationships. So it's not just within the family unit that's dysfunctional, and it's not just this emotionally immature parent that has very unhealthy relationships, but you'll start seeing they don't have as many friends. A lot of their friendships will end up broken. The parent will burn bridges fast, burn bridges in the workforce, in the community, even anyone to do with the child. So it could be my girlfriend's mother, and then my mom gets ticked off at my girlfriend's mother. And my mom will burn bridges with this person's mother. I mean, I've seen it happen over and over again, how different times I may have had girlfriends' mothers who were very concerned for my well-being and safety, and they would try to intervene on my behalf, which, hey, I give them so much credit now for stepping in and trying to advocate for me when I was a child, because I wasn't mature enough to do so. I wasn't in that position to take care of me, because I was a youngster. And so, for example, my best friend, her mom intervened on my behalf. She picked up the phone and called my mother, and she tried to have an adult conversation with my mother and share her concerns. Well, my mom just absolutely freaked out over that, started screaming at her, like F-bombs flying everywhere, and that was the end of it. And my mother was just beside herself, screaming at me, blaming me, telling me to stop sharing our family secrets. Don't share the family juicy secrets with your girlfriend, because your girlfriend might tell her parent, and then the parent may turn around, either call the cops, call CYS, contact the parent, the emotionally immature parent, and say, hey, you got to get your shit together, because you are a parent now. You're an adult. You need to be really stepping up and being that adult and taking care of your children and being the bigger person and making the right choices to keep your child safe and healthy and so forth. But what happened is, my mother had a long list of broken relationships. She jumped from man to man, bar to bar. She had friendships that may have been for a while strong, and then they kind of crumbled and fell apart. Different friends of hers would call her out. They would confront her and say, hey, I'm not happy with the way you're mistreating me. And so again, a lot of times my mother would burn her bridges, and she'd go through a lot of relationships, and she was constantly, crying the victim card and saying it was all them. And she would never, ever take accountability for her own actions and behaviors and toxic scenarios, all the things that played out. That's a big sign. So perhaps it was either your mother or your father. There's a good chance they were probably divorced, maybe went through many husbands or wives. It's very common for the emotionally immature parent to end up in divorce court, and then to end up in many broken relationships even after that. Next is self-reflection. Now, self-reflection is a big part of being an adult. Adults are expanding, we are growing, and we're growing personally, we're growing spiritually, we're growing physically. In our profession, we may be growing. As a parent, we're growing. I am a parent, and I could say how I think about things and different beliefs I have today about parenting may not have been my beliefs 30 years ago about parenting. And that's because I've evolved, I've changed, I've grown. I've done a whole lot of inner self-reflection, and that has grown me and transformed me. But what happens is the parent who is emotionally immature, there is no self-reflection. They don't dare look in the mirror and take a good, hard, close look at who they are inside. So they don't want to self-reflect on what did they say? How did that hurt someone? How did they mistreat someone? What was the long-term consequences for that? The parent does not want to take a look at themselves because they don't want to know the truth. They are fearful, insecure, cowards who are wimps as parents. bad parents, unfit parenting, and they can't take a good look at themselves and self-reflect on their behaviors, their actions, their beliefs, their lifestyle, and their choices, especially in how they parent, because they don't want to admit the truth, because the truth hurts. So this self-reflection, all about the looking inward, the examining, the truth-seeking, the being honest. Utter honesty is required in parenting. And sometimes we have to admit the truth. There are times that we may make mistakes as a parent. Now, keep in mind, this is really important, especially for anyone who is a parent or even those who don't have kids. There's no perfect parent. Okay, so there is no such thing as a perfect parent, just like there is no such thing as a perfect marriage. There is no such thing as anyone who's perfect. We all have our own shortcomings. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But part of life, part of self-reflection is understanding where we have weaknesses, where we have some shortcomings, and to try to improve on them. Now, that is really essential. That is showing that we're growing. To admit, I'm not a perfect parent. And to say I'm sorry. It's so important to say I'm sorry. To have genuine apology for your shortcomings and to ask for forgiveness. I think that's a really big part of being an adult and being a mature parent. Next, and this is still on the self-reflection, because the more I reflect on self-reflection, the more things come up to the surface and I start really thinking of everything that's really important. So here's a little more side notes on self-reflection. Since the immature parent, the emotionally very immature and unavailable parent, will never look inward and they won't take accountability for their own actions, they will never change. So if we don't self-reflect, we're not open to change. So if someone lives in denial, they are stuck. They'll never grow as a human being. They'll never grow as a parent. They'll never grow at all, possibly never even spiritually grow, because they're living in denial. So if they continue to live in the darkness and allow the web of lies to just be a big part of dictating who they are, living a lie, living in denial, minimizing the truth, they'll never expand themselves, which will make them a very stale, dull person and unhealthy to be around. Denial keeps them stuck as an emotionally immature person. So if they refuse to self-reflect, to take a good close look inward, then they constantly instead will blame other people. It's back to that whole thing on playing the blame game. And that's unhealthy, because, we have to grow up. We have to choose to become the adult, because our children are so special. Our children are a gift to us, and our children deserve love and gentleness and care, and they deserve a mature adult parent who will love them and take care of them and give them this unconditional, no strings attached. Instead, we give them what they need, and we're there for them, and we advocate for them, and we care about them so much that they are a priority in our lives. Sometimes this lack of self-reflection from the emotionally immature parent will lead to more broken relationships. It will cause some deep, deep wounds, not just in the child, but in anyone who crosses the path of this emotionally immature parent. Okay, number 8, invalidation. Oh boy, this is another long one. This is another one that's a deep, deep topic that we need to uncover. So your legitimate needs, especially as a child and a teenager, are not heard and not validated by the emotionally immature parent. So you have needs, legitimate needs, as you are growing up and you need someone to take care of you. But the emotionally immature parent will lack sensitivity. They will not nurture you. They are not empathic. They are not compassionate. They are not caring. They are not gentle. they may not even be around. You know, it could be for some of you, your parent was absent, they were distant. Maybe you were brought up by your grandparents or someone else, got into foster care or some other situation, you know, or your parent could have been physically present, but just emotionally, spiritually absent, just not available for you whatsoever. Next is that until the parent can acknowledge that the child has needs and to acknowledge that they are supposed to be responsible, you know, the child may be left to flounder. You know, again, this is directly connected to child neglect and child abuse. Children are not supposed to parent themselves. Okay, that is just absolutely appalling, despicable, and outright dysfunctional. It's not fair to the child. Next, number 9, emotional validation is the foundation for emotional safety and stability in any relationship, including with parents, siblings, family, and etc., etc. Psychological invalidation is painful, it's destructive, it's hurtful. Basically, children with an emotionally immature parent will grow up thinking that they don't matter because they have lived year after year, decade after decade, being neglected, being abused. For the emotionally unavailable and immature parent to just never really give a hoot one way or the other about them, this child then grows up really believing that their life is worthless, that they have no value, that they have no purpose. There are times teenagers will commit suicide because they are so devastated over the neglect and the lack of love and stability on the home front. It's extremely heartbreaking when this happens, and yet it has become an epidemic in our world. There are many emotionally unstable, unfit parents in our society. Next is that we have to understand that an emotionally immature mother and father who are neglectful and abusive parents are actually not only hurting themselves, but they're traumatizing their children. You know, it's very, very traumatic for a child to grow up in a home where the parent is never available. The parent only cares about their own self or his own self, when the parent is just never around. And it could be in some situations a very dysfunctional home front where the bills aren't paid, the electricity's shut off, the gas is shut off, the water is shut off, there's no food in the refrigerator, the child's not getting fed and not getting nourished appropriately. I mean, there are so many other factors, but again, this is only a slice of the pie to do with everything regarding the emotionally unavailable and immature parent. Now, if you yourself have experienced this, share your story with me. Was it your mother? Was it your father? Was it both parents who are emotionally immature and unavailable? Did your parents divorce? Was there a lack of food, clothes, shelter, love, care in your home? Did you have challenges academically in which your parents were not there to advocate for you? Were there any other things that were big red flags for you in your home as you were growing up that were like giant red flags about your parent being emotionally unavailable and immature? If so, I'd love to hear your story. Share with me. And in the meanwhile, you could visit me at danaarcuri.com. Thanks and have a wonderful day.